Hi friends, and welcome back to the Parkinson's Disease Education Podcast. Today, I am really excited to share another special guest with you, Dr. George Ackerman. Dr. George Ackerman is the son of Sharon Riff Ackerman, who's the inspiration for the organization Together for Sharon. Honestly, organization isn't the right word. Together for Sharon is really a movement. George is a tireless advocate for Parkinson's disease research, for the cure, and an advocate for caregivers who deal with persons with Parkinson's disease in their everyday life. Sharon sadly passed away due to complications from Parkinson's disease and dementia on January 1st, 2020. I'll let the conversation speak for itself, but briefly before we roll the intro, I did want to say that I've been connected with George since the first year that he started Together for Sharon in 2020. Around that time, I believe, is when we got connected and when he joined my Facebook group and so forth. And I can tell you, he is a tireless person. He posts every single day of the week, nonstop. He's up all hours. You know, he doesn't ever give up the idea that there could be a cure for Parkinson's disease, that things could be better for people living with Parkinson's now and for people living with Parkinson's disease in the future and their caregivers. That's all I'm going to say before we roll the footage, but I'll join you on the other side of the intro, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you Dr. George Ackerman and introducing you to Together for Sharon. Let's go. Welcome to the Parkinson's Disease Education Show, where we demystify the disease and empower you as the person with Parkinson's disease to reach your true potential. The content contained on this show is for informational purposes only and is not meant to be a replacement for information or advice that you receive from your in-person medical or therapy professionals. If you haven't already, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and for an even more personalized experience, please ask us about our memberships. Now, without further ado, let's start the show. Hello, everybody watching and listening. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. Michael Hyland, physical therapist and the host of the Parkinson's Disease Education YouTube and podcast. I have a special guest today with me, Dr. George Ackerman. He's a Parkinson's disease advocate. His mother, Sharon Ackerman, is a very special person we're going to hear more about. And his mission is to spread the news about Parkinson's disease, to advocate for a cure, to advocate for resources and services, and to never forget the memory of Sharon, his mother. So welcome to the show, George, and I'm really pleased to have you as a guest, and I'm honored that you asked to be on the podcast. So I wanted to let you introduce yourself briefly and tell us a little bit about Together for Sharon and kind of obviously the backstory behind that. I think that would become better from your words than from mine. So
I really appreciate your time. I feel like we become family because we're all really family in this fight for a cure. Unfortunately, my mother passed about 4 years ago, coming up to holidays, which is kind of the toughest time. But she had Parkinson's for approximately 15 years. Unfortunately, she didn't really share much about it until towards 3 to 4 years at the end. And that's when I had really no choice but to take over a lot of her life because the disease really somehow caught up too quickly and took her really faster than we could have ever dreamt. I started Together for Sharon.com only because I felt alone when I was going through caretaking for my mother. I didn't know what Parkinson's was. She didn't even, want us to know, which was tough. And all we really noticed is her left arm was rigid and had trouble cutting food, but it never really affected her life so much as it did towards the end, where she went from, walking and taking long walks to going to a cane for a year, from a cane to a walker, from a walker to a wheelchair, and finally bedbound. And I was still in shock today that, kind of defies what we believe, not we, but the community scientists, because they say you can live with Parkinson's, you don't die from it, you might die from something else. But my mother really didn't have any other medical conditions. So I'm thinking either she gained this loss of, appetite, loss of ability to walk, and a lot of other things like internal tremors due to maybe too many medicines, maybe too little. It's just so complicated as a caretaker to navigate through this. So we started the website really just to kind of put a place where other people, because I know there are others going through what I did, as a resource for them. And again, it's just me. We're not a foundation. I don't ask for any money. I also do this just out of the hope that others don't have to ever go through what my mother and my family did.
Yeah, that's an important message that you're spreading because I love that you have the website and all the advocacy that you're doing on social media because it is a way that I feel like to unite people that are caring for loved ones with Parkinson's disease and to have solidarity there. And that was actually an important distinction you made a second ago. I wanted to key in on that. You may have heard George say he doesn't. It's not a foundation. They're not raising funds directly, but if you do go to Together for Sharon, you will find places you can donate to for Parkinson's disease research and resources. Correct?
Yeah, we actually donated my own family and raised about $10,000 in 4 years. A lot of it's our donation from my personal fund because, again, I want my mother to be remembered, but I thought it was important that, well, number one, I really don't want anything. It's funny, we'll do walks sometimes and we'll have a table. We're in the middle of all these pharmaceutical companies and we're not selling anything. So I've had people come up to me and then they kind of back away. But then when they realize why we're there, they hug us, cry, and they kiss us, and it's like a really like a beautiful thing. So I started adding American Parkinson's Disease Association, Parkinson's Foundation, and the Michael J. Fox Foundation, so people could have choices. I don't really direct anyone to one. There's so many
Right.
others. I love the Brian Graham Foundation. I love the Davis Finney Foundation. So there's so many out there. I want people
Yeah.
really just to be aware of them. So I don't really. The only reason I was a big proponent for the American Parkinson's Disease Association is when my mother was struggling and myself as her caretaker, I actually called a lot of them. Some of them, unfortunately, weren't in my location, so they really couldn't do anything. But the ADPA showed up at my house, and unfortunately, they offered some amazing programs like fitness. But at that point, my mother was too sick. But just that they showed up was really meant a lot. So I just give choices, but even for your viewers, it's really up to them. Again, I'm doing this more just to get the word out. Something I want to focus more on today is also people who are not in the Parkinson's community. So people who don't have Parkinson's and people who are caretakers that don't have
Hmm.
a loved one, because it's really a team. If we don't have everyone in the world gathered around this cause, and we're never going to find a cure. Also, I discovered just recently when I started Together for Sharon.com, it was about my mother and I. Because we have about 1 million people in the US approximately with Parkinson's, but then after seeing a few months ago the World Parkinson's Congress I wasn't aware of, I learned there's about 10 million in the world people. So that's when
Yeah.
it kind of hit me like one of those funny, like Bugs Bunny lights, and my brain just lit up and said, "George, this is not about you and your mom anymore. It's about everybody." So that's where I started just a journey, and it's been 4 months. And to be honest, and I say it a lot, I'm cutting back. I might kind of stop them, but I had an incredible opportunity to interview about 400 people, and you're one of them, my favorite. And the reason I did that, and I share them every day. One pops up, and today, I don't know if they can see, but if you go to Together for Sharon, click interviews. But today I share a story of Elaine, and she's from the World Up Tour Project. And it's just incredible that there's so many people out there doing things for Parkinson's like yourself, but they're just, some people aren't aware of it. And that's really what
Yeah.
still breaks my heart today, is knowing that I know Dr. Hyland and that there's someone out there that might be able to benefit from what you do. They just don't know about you. So obviously you're working really hard around the world too, but why not? I feel like when you join together, our voices are just so much stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Awareness is the key thing. I mean, the resources, the connections can be there, but if you're not aware of them, it doesn't do any good. So I appreciate what you said, but I appreciate you sharing that as well. And you're sharing so many different things and so many different people out there, either persons with Parkinson's disease and persons that help persons with Parkinson's disease and so forth. I think it's a great thing that you're doing for awareness and advocacy. So I want to thank you for what you
Thanks.
do on
Yeah, I
behalf of
know.
Sharon.
Yeah, a lot of us don't do it for the thanks, but I definitely appreciate it. There are nights that honestly I still don't sleep thinking about, maybe not regretting, but could I have done this? Could I have done that? I also have so many friends now that are diagnosed, I've become family with. There's Esther. I don't know if you know Esther, Mark Millo. There's also Melissa Levington. I'm actually meeting them soon. We're going to all start our own little thing and share that with the world, because there's nothing, in my opinion, this is my little secret, that I haven't seen anything that brings, or a podcast that brings caretakers and those diagnosed together. So it's a new
Right.
concept we're trying. I also started recently my own podcast. It's called the Together with Sharon podcast with my wife and I love those because it's my wife involved, so it's nice to have, my female perspective, and we'll be doing one together in 2024. It's really a great experience. And then I just started a new segment, and it's all just me, but it's going to be a Q&A with Sharon's son, George, where I'll just literally interview people for 20 minutes. It's different than a podcast because it's more like literal, I'm going to just not bombard them, but throw in like question Q&A. That's a Q&A, Q&A. And
Yeah.
I try to always be new and innovative. And before my prior life, before my mother was with us, became a lawyer. Then I was a police officer, and then I did my PhD criminal justice, taught around the country. I was a victims advocate for family members of victims who've lost their loved ones.
Wow.
And today I've switched to this world, but in a way, I feel like they're kind of the same, similar. When family members
Hmm.
lose their loved ones due to crime, they're forgotten, unfortunately, by the system. In Parkinson's, I find and I feel caretakers and those diagnosed are really still forgotten by our system. And that's why I'm
Yeah.
really proud of Michael J. Fox Foundation and their push for the End Parkinson's Disease bill, which I was lucky enough to also represent and speak to my local representative.
That's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that bill before we move on
Yeah,
from
of
there?
course. Yeah, if you go to togetherforsharon.com, you'll see the actual bill is a link to my page. I actually, basically, you and any of your viewers can contact your local congressman or woman and just tell them you want to support the bill. What the bill will do is fund research, but it also help fund caretakers and those diagnosed. A lot of people just, of course, are financially strapped, and it's very tough. I mean, we were paying 12,000 a month just to have kind of caretakers with my
Yeah.
mother 24/7 because I was scared she was going to fall. That doesn't include entertainment, food, living, and just being, able to survive. No one normal can do that, and it's time that our government gets involved and really helps focus. There's nothing like this for Parkinson's. I'm astonished. We have things, obviously, and I'm happy for Alzheimer's and other horrible diseases, which I wish there was a cure for all of them. But to have nothing out there to support the families and
Yeah.
those diagnoses really shouldn't be something that's imaginable.
I have to agree, especially, and we're speaking as Americans here, and of course, there's people across the world that would feel the same way. But but as fellow Americans, I think we can agree that with the resources our country has, there should be something.
What's ironic is there are actually individuals in, sadly, but some representatives, I know there's one even recently, a few months ago, who had to step down from her state due to Parkinson's. Then Chuck Schumer is the leader of the Democrat Party in the Senate.
Hmm.
His father has Parkinson's. So, again, I hate hearing that, but in a way, they could really change the world and help with awareness, especially like celebrities. I've been
Yeah.
lucky enough to interview Muhammad Ali's daughter. But, we really need, I've sent 15, I'm very honest in these podcast, but I've sent about 15 letters to other individuals who are celebrities and really didn't get much response. I also sent
Yeah.
15 letters to my representatives and they didn't even respond. And also 15 letters to different pit newspapers and outlets and no response. So those are the things that need to change in our society. The news, and no offense, but they'll rush over here to my house when I have a story, maybe about, well, I was a victim once of like cyber crime. I'm a cop and
Yeah.
a lawyer, and they were shocked. But so they rushed here for that. But guess what? When I asked the same people, let's do a story on Parkinson's awareness, it's crickets, and that's the problem. So
Yeah.
that's why we both do what we do. I will never stop fighting until there's a cure.
Amen. And I wanted to
What is
Let's go ahead.
So I mean, the other sad fact is that again, I've been doing a lot of reading and research. I'm actually writing my own book. I get yelled at for telling people till it's ready, but I've been doing a lot of research, and I even read the End Parkinson's Disease book by some of the
Yes.
leading scientists, and I've actually interviewed some of them, Dr. Oakland and Dr. Dorsey, and also others. But we don't know if it's from chemicals, if it's biological, but the water supply. My mother definitely, I feel confident, could have had something to do with the bug spray. She lived in a beautiful home, but didn't really know to take care of it. And I remember she had mold.
Hmm.
She had, back then with the bug spray, who knows with termites what they did. And I just wish I had, had the money and the change to pull her out of there. We eventually did. It was the last year though of her life, and we didn't know she wasn't going to be with us for 10 years. But it was, a little bit too late. But again, I can get it. I'm not going to say I'm not going to be oblivious to this. There's a chance that I might get it. So, I still have to think about all those things too when we advocate.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to where it all began, tell us a little bit more, just on the personal side, about your mom. I'd love to hear more about her, other than what I've already heard online.
Yeah.
But there are people that have never heard about her, so I'd love for them to understand, um, uh, basically, what she meant to you, and why this is so important to you.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because I post so much. We talk. I look at other people's posts. I'm so inspired, but in some days you really like concentrating more on awareness and things. But I don't really talk much about her personality. I've just started. My book is going to actually go dive deeply into my mother, her upbringing, and then mine, and how she really sacrificed everything she ever did in her career so I could be who I am and be at the
Mm,
point I am in my life. So I'm grateful for eternity to that. She was really friendly, caring. She was the person I honestly went to like 10 times a day for advice
mm,
from the days I'm from New York. So from the days of 9/11, I remember calling her first, from, the bad times, from the good times when I met my wife, when I was my first date, called my mother. I mean, she was, so now it's kind of sad because even a few months ago, my wife and I went to a Lionel Richie concert. And yes,
yeah.
I like the music because my mother forced me to listen to it when I was a kid, and long drives from Broadway. Used to go to Broadway a lot from Brooklyn. And so, but when I went on the drive home, I looked at my wife. I said, I wish my mother was here. I would have been excited to share that with her. And, you can't. So I shared
Hmm.
everything with her. I'm kind of proud to say I was a mama's boy. But I do feel like a piece of me died with her, sadly, when she passed. And I do feel like we were all, stolen. She was only 69. And in 2023, I believe, selfishly should live till 85 or 90. I saw someone
Yeah.
that was 101, so we didn't get that time. She was very giving. She again, even when she found out about Parkinson's diagnosis, she wouldn't tell me. She shared it with my father. They were divorced, but he helped her. And if part of me thinks if she told me earlier, I might have been able to do more, but I don't think we could have. The disease, when it takes over, just something horribly and shocking. And if we had time for another day, even just talking about stage 5 in the last year or something, I often don't share. But what I did is I kept a journal throughout the last year, and I'll be sharing that in the book. I also videotaped and took pictures, but I'll never share that. I did it more for medical science if they needed it, but I don't want
Yeah.
her remembered. I don't want her remembered for that. But in conclusion, she was just really, she had a lot of friends. She loved to do fitness, like walks. She was very, loved to eat food. I told the story the other day. My dream was to get a Corvette. Finally, I made it at age like 40. Around then, I bought a little blue one. And I had, actually, this is before that because I hadn't met my wife. So I used to take my
Hmm.
mother on a date every month. So we would have in like beautiful restaurant, just me and my mother, and she loved it. And then when I met my wife, she's like, "You better not, forget me." So what we did is we had to dump the Corvette for a while, but my wife and my mother and I all would go on beautiful dates, and it was just a lot of fun. And thank God, my wife and my mother loved each other like her own daughter. So, that was another, it was, the whole thing just tough. It's not just me. It was just rough on my wife. I have 3 children. My younger two don't really remember everything, but my oldest daughter was about 6. And I
Hmm.
remember it's like a memory that won't go away. I have a video, but it's even on Facebook. It comes up like a haunting thing every year. One bad thing about Facebook, if you look at memories,
The
but
memories, yeah.
yeah. But my wife, it was after the funeral. We got home and I didn't expect it, but my daughter just went over to my wife and starts hysterically crying. So it was, just shock. That's the thing with Parkinson's. It just everybody's so different. Like much more than me. You have take 10 patients. Every single one is so different. It's just a
Yes,
horrible disease and one that I want to be rid of it in the earth, the whole planet.
absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And as you were saying that, it kind of occurred to me, you know, obviously nothing can fill that void, but you said a piece of you is missing, which of course loss will do that, and it's a reality in a way, spiritually, of course. But also, I feel like what you're doing and what we're doing now, talking about this and memorializing her this way, um, in a very real way, I believe keeps her alive.
I agree, and it helps me still with grief. And what's interesting, and I've just discovered this too. I'm in a weird world. You're in an interesting world too, but you're at least in the medical profession, so that's like another. I always think of 3 worlds, like there's the medical profession, those diagnosed, and the care partners. But the problem is, care partners are usually the ones, like all these groups, are for caretakers who are actually caring currently while they're alive.
Currently.
And I'm in a weird world. I've done a lot of research again, and I do spend a lot of time on this, even though I don't have any time. But there's really absolutely, in my view, nothing that I've found in doing this for a few years for those who've lost a loved one and are still grieving for it. So I'm actually working with a group now. We might start that exact area next 2024, and I'll be the host or the not host, but the counselor, and we're going to start a group for people who have lost a loved one due to Parkinson.
That would be fantastic. I think that would be so appreciated for people, by people across the world. Um, do you have any idea when that's going to start?
I actually have a meeting in a few weeks, but believe me, you'll be one of the first I'll tell, and we'll post it everywhere. It's actually with a group. I'm new to this, but and I don't want to take our time. But they are interesting, and we don't often talk about it. But there's a lot of issues, and one of them is Parkinsonians, which is where someone might be diagnosed Parkinson's but doesn't have Parkinson's. And we have
Right.
the problem where people are misdiagnosed, and we have the problem where, unfortunately, like with my mother, she didn't tell anyone, like me, she told my father. So there's a lot of areas out there, and that's actually what they focus on. While we continue, I'll try and find it, but it's a really great group. I'm new to them, so and they have a long name too. It's like a awareness, but I mean, I think it's going to definitely happen, probably hopefully January 2024. But again,
Okay.
my biggest problem and fear that I get involved with too much, and I'm the kind of person that won't stop and won't back down. So I'll probably take on all these things, but that's another thing we can go rewind. And the health also of the caretaker is also a big problem, because I used to be a big fitness person. I used to be a big person, with basketball. I was competitive, and with all the Parkinson's and going through my mother, a lot of my own health definitely suffered. I've had a lot of back surgeries. I'm not saying that had anything to do with caring for my mother, but you often neglect a lot of your own issues and things because you're caretaking. I'm doing the same thing in a bad way right now, because I feel like if there's just one post or one story I didn't share, that those could have changed the world or even found one person that would have learned about them, then it
Hmm.
breaks my heart.
Yeah. Well, I
I
think the
found
fact that you
it's called PSP awareness. I don't know. It's hard to show these things. Oh, there it is.
PFP awareness. Yeah, no, it's the
Yeah.
now you disappeared because of the
Sorry,
background.
there it is. That's it.
Oh yeah, I see it now. PSP
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty popular, and the thing is, they're unique because they're not just Parkinson's, so it's nice. And they actually have an entire array of support groups already, but they have nothing like what we discussed.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to highlight that. So what George is talking about is he mentioned Parkinsonian or Parkinson's plus is what he's referring to. So as he said correctly, there are people that are diagnosed as Parkinson's that are not correctly diagnosed because they may have some other form of Parkinson's plus or Parkinsonism, where it kind of mimics PD, but it isn't PD, and it might even need to be treated differently. So the one he just mentioned was PSP awareness. That's progressive supranuclear palsy, which presents very similarly to PD and can be treated similarly in some ways, but it is a very different condition. And then there's others such as multiple system atrophy, corticobasal degeneration, and even Lewy body dementia as a primary diagnosis is not to be confused with Parkinson's with Lewy body dementia or Parkinson's disease with Lewy bodies. Technically, that's a different thing, but Lewy body dementia, LBD, has a small awareness group, and I can't think of off the top of my head what the name of the website is, but I could put that in the description. That's worth looking into, those other organizations, because they need advocacy and support just as much as Parkinson's, because they're even less represented.
And that's why I like talking to you, because you can get all the medical terms. I always say I'm not a medical doctor. My PhD is in philosophy of criminal justice. So I don't want anyone to ever. I always recommend see your medical professional. Don't listen to me I'm not here for medical advice. Lately, because I've been reading End Parkinson's Disease, the book, and I'm writing, I try and talk a little bit more on some tougher topics like the DBS surgery, which again, I can only speak from my mother and my experiences. So if anyone reads my posts and our podcast, I'm just trying to get the topics out there. There are a lot of topics, I believe, that are very tough topics, and people seem to just not want to talk about it. One example is Death with Dignity Act, and also the medical licensed marijuana. These are all topics in my brain that I sit there and wonder about, but I have no one to talk to about them. Those are things I like to post because it kind of starts the conversation. And I think if you don't have the conversation like you just mentioned with PSP, then we're never going to come to any solution. So I'm always up for any topic. Again, I don't have a lot of experience. I know some incredible people who've had DBS surgery. Unfortunately, some of them had to go back a few times. And, I've done interviews with all those individuals. So there's so many topics too that, like, even again, back to Death with Dignity. My mother sadly lived the last 7 days of her life. She had a heartbeat, but she wasn't alive. And no one would help us. They just kept giving morphine, which was horrible. We could see she's in pain. And we treat our animals in Florida better than our loved ones. So I thought maybe reach out to this group called Death with Dignity. And again, I won't say anything bad or good, but I wanted to do a story on them. Can't get a response. And that's the problem. And again, that's the heartbreaking part. We're all here. I don't want anything literally in return. Like, you didn't interview me. I only asked you to keep fighting. I didn't ask for I didn't even ask for this podcast. I just wanted to come on because I feel like we're a family. But they gotta get with us. If they don't, I could have spread that program around the world. They're not even passed in Florida, so they need help. But here you have advocates, and you want to help it. And this is a reach out just to them. If Death with Dignity is listening, if you ever want me to help share your what you're doing, I'd love to, because I think we need people to be able to have that choice. A big problem is Parkinson's under the law is not recognized as an end-of-life disease. And once again, my mother, if you had seen her and met her, she wasn't unfortunately coming back.
Yeah, and in the I hesitate to use the word stages, but as the progression becomes to a certain point, that does become inevitable, unfortunately, in many, many, many cases. So
there's actually, with you, it's interesting because if I'm not interviewing you now, we'll talk later. But the one sad thing is when you go into hospice, and normally I think whatever normal is, it's only a week or a month. We were in a special program for a year, a hospice for a year. What that did was great was because we had an official nurse who would come once a week, refill medicine. The problem is they don't believe in physical therapy. When you
Right.
my mother's only hope was working out or doing something. When they took that away, she was heartbroken and kind of crushed. And
Yep.
I don't, as a caretaker, but a son, I sat there and like I didn't know what to say, what to do. How do you keep someone to have hope? There was a point where, the therapist said she just can't do it, which is completely reasonable because she was getting too sick. But to have a whole, a year
Hmm.
ahead, you need to keep doing something. And that was tough. So it's like a weird world where you want to go to hospice because you need the medical support. And they had a
Right.
24-hour hotline, which was I needed. My head was going to explode because every single day it was like I told someone the other day, it's like when, Bugs Bunny, also Taz, or one of the Tasmanian Devil, when they just like was going like that. I felt like that was my brain because
Yeah.
I kept searching for an idea to help her, make her comfortable, and everything I did kind of like felt like it failed.
Yeah, you brought up an important point there with hospice. I want to share that with our viewers too, or listeners. Briefly, in the American medical system, when you're on Medicare, um, this is particularly for those with Medicare um, or Medicare Advantage. If you have Part B medical services, um, so outpatient therapy. Um, well, it doesn't even have to be Part B. Honestly, it could just be it could be home health under Medicare Part A. It could be hospital care, inpatient rehab, skilled nursing, whatever you have it. All those therapies are covered because they're all considered to be restorative care. Hospice care, even though it's Medicare Part A, is not considered restorative. So Medicare, in its wisdom, does not support restorative services that are considered restorative, which would be like therapies. And that's the rationale, at least, that they will give. Um, and typically, as George said, they don't offer therapy in hospice. And if they do, it's very, very, very limited. And they essentially do it for free because they don't get reimbursed for it at all. So,
It's sad. It's kind of sad though, because I know you go there for that purpose, but what if there, is a way to, get better, but that's not their goal.
well, if it were me, and of course, they're not asking either one of us, but
Yeah.
I would argue that physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy
Yeah.
is a means to a quality of life improvement, not just function. So, but
Yeah.
this is where
Yeah.
we are, unfortunately.
One thing they did offer was it was out of business now, but I would have loved it if they had animal therapy where they would bring an animal, which my mother loved animals, but they
Yes.
didn't have it at the time. Also, they had music therapy, which was great. They also had religious. We were not religious, but they did have a rabbi come in, which was nice. But the biggest thing is, and again, I don't want to keep saying sadder stories, but you go to togetherforsharon.com and scroll down. You'll. I had a great opportunity. Unfortunately, the week before my mother passed, like I mentioned earlier, we lived in New York. She used to bring me to Broadway as a child. I love Broadway, and we saw Cats. Our favorite song was that song "Memory," and
Hmm.
so we decided the guitar. I play guitar. I got a chance for some reason. We just winged it. I sat down with the music therapist who sang and played guitar, and we both played "Memory" for my mother. And it was
Mm.
it. It was the last time she ever spoke, and she said she loved it and thank you, and that was it. But I actually thankfully taped it for some reason, and we put it on the website, so you won't see my mother. You might not hear her, but at the end, that was the last time she ever spoke. So it was touching and tough, but it was one moment, a positive that I'm grateful I had a chance to do.
That's really special. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, I think we're getting close to our time, but I wanted to ask you before we conclude. Um, we talked about a lot of different things, but if you were to, I guess, have a request or at least a way, if you were to direct somebody to visit Together for Sharon and to share that website, but if somebody visiting Together for Sharon, is there any one thing you would recommend in terms of, um, I guess, what to look for, what to get out of it, essentially?
I mean, this, to be honest, has become bigger than me. It's now about, the world and everyone else. So it's been an amazing ride. I always joke and say I'm just getting started because I have a lot planned. I have a few books planned, one that might change the world. I want to focus a lot on changing the world of responders and police and how they deal with individuals with Parkinson. Because right now,
Hmm.
someone gets pulled over and they're shaking law enforcement. I'm a
Yeah.
academy teacher. We have no time in the academy protocol or training for that. So like, and
Right.
I've spoken to big organizations that might even want to have a bill go throughout the world, the whole United States for that. That's going to take a lot of time. But if you visit the website, I mean, it's great in my opinion. I'm biased. It has our story. It says our mission. It has my favorite part lately again is the interviews with yours there. You can even my biggest thing is please share your journey for your listeners if you or a loved one.
Hmm.
And I'm not just focusing. I don't want it to get out of control, but I'm actually not just focusing on Parkinson. My mother also had dementia, which we don't have time. She had
Hmm.
terrible hallucinations and delusions, which is really the worst of everything. But I did a few interviews with the Lewy body. I've done one even with some other different types of diseases. So it's not. It's really I want to cure for everything. It's just a dementia and dyskinesia and dystonia all hit us first personally. So I've done stories with individuals who had those, but they'll also see the interviews with the place where you can donate. Not to us. We don't accept donations. Someone once gave me $5 at a walk. I ran home, deposit to the American Parking, and I got a receipt, sent it to the gentleman. I said, I'm not, I don't want the money. So, and then stuff about walks we've done, events. Also, I have a lot up there on dementia, people like partners, dystonia, also fitness, which I should add you, because that's, and also we just added, I'm really proud of a section on researchers and scientists. So out of my 100, out of my 400 interviews, I've gotten about 20 really incredible biologists, scientists, and leading individuals in the world. And I just dedicate a little section for that because those are areas I can't really discuss and won't get into. And finally, there's one, my favorite, is the media section. And in the media
Yeah.
section, if you go, I actually did a presentation on to get like a whole hour on what I do and about my mother. I
Oh,
also have
great.
blogs and articles and speeches. It's just getting TV, radio, artwork, and again, my new thing is the Q&A. So I like the
Hmm.
Q&A because it kind of gets a little bit more personal. The podcasts, which we'll be doing, are fun, and that's with my wife. But that's more about you and more about like what you're doing. The Q&A, I want it's kind of trying to look at a different perspective where just me and the person kind of hitting and hammering it hardcore. So there's a lot on
Right.
there. I mean, I had a nice comment. I never really hear back. We've had thousands of people visit. I think I reached 50,000 people, which is amazing. I said I'd reach 4 people and I'd
Awesome.
be happy. But someone once wrote, they went on the website and read all the interviews for like 10 hours and they couldn't believe the time, how it flew by. But that's what I want. I just want, if one person knows Dr. Hyland is out there now before, then I basically can rest for a moment, but then I have to fight, get back out there. And the last thing I always leave everyone with is that I just want people to know there that I'm out there and I send my love and support. I want nothing, literally nothing in return, but I do want to find a cure or at least help. Obviously, I'm not the one doing it, but I feel that our voices are so powerful. We can either just move on like many do, or we can keep fighting, and that's what I chose to do. One last thing is a nurse, sadly, in the hospice told me, sadly, oh, why are you doing this to me? Like, why you, because she said that most sons don't do what I do. And I was really saddened by that. And she said most people put the loved one in a nursing home and that's it. But obviously
Yeah.
everyone has their own thing. But I was proud to say I never did that. We kept her in her own home. There were times
Yeah.
though I didn't know what to do and I was gonna do it, but then it was like again with the inner, there's a good guy and a bad guy on the
Yeah.
shoulders yelling at me. But again, I look back, I don't regret anything. We tried everything. Even looking at the research now, there's nothing else I could have done. But again, I wish we had a cure, and if we can't for me and my family, I'm going to make sure we someday have one for everyone else. And if not, hopefully my daughter and children will keep this going. So thank you again
Yeah.
for your time and your friendship and all your listeners. It means the world to me. Thank you.
My pleasure, George. Thank you so much for your time and for being with me today.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Definitely.
I hope you really enjoyed that conversation. As always, I'm really enjoying having guests on the show, and I really hope that you're enjoying hearing from them as much as I am, and getting to converse with them and getting to know them better. Before you go, I wanted to let you know where to access Together for Sharon. Obviously, they're all over social media, so I'm going to post links in the description below to all the socials for Together for Sharon, as well as the website togetherforsharon.com. And I do want to encourage you to visit the website, take a look at the interviews that George has done, including mine, of course, but there's many, many people, in my opinion, more qualified than I am to speak on this subject of Parkinson's disease, caregiving, research, medicine, everything else. You can also get a wristband. I don't have one yet. I haven't ordered one, but it looks just like this. And if you order one, they'll send you one for free. In fact, to make things even easier, if you'd like to skip going to the website, or at least skip searching for this on the website, if you just type hashtag Together for Sharon in the comments below, I will immediately reply, or as quickly as I can, reply with a direct link to where you can order your Together for Sharon wristbands. As always, thanks so much for watching. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. As always, be empowered.